science has an overwhelming consensus that non-human animals are very broadly sentient, that they can feel pain, they can feel pleasure, they can have joy, they can have relationships, that there is really no deep difference in a scientific sense between the puppy at my feet, a pig in a factory farm, and even, maybe an 18-month-old human child, right? In a scientific sense, the nature of their experience, rich parallels, because we all evolved in a very similar way, right? We're all part of this family tree. So the scientific consensus is there that sentience is very widely spread. The philosophical consensus is more tricky because anthropocentrism, this idea of humans being the center of the entire world, some even call it human supremacy, is very powerful, that it affects philosophy too. But there is also an emerging strong philosophical consensus that sentience is what should matter when we're thinking about who matters, right? So that would say, the scientific consensus is clear that non-human animals are very broadly sentient. The philosophical consensus is saying, look, all sentient beings should warrant moral consideration. That would lead you, if animal agriculture didn't exist today, to a stance in which you would never start it. Right? You would never start it. If it didn't exist today, I don't think anyone could come up with a reason to start it. Yet because it does exist, and because we're socialized into thinking it's acceptable, even desirable, that's the challenge and that's the clash. And what we will do as humans, because going back to the epistemological point, right, we all like to think we're rational beings to some degree. We use evidence and reason. If the evidence changes, we'll change our view. But actually, an enormous amount of our own human psychology, and I speak for myself too, a lot of my own intellectual capacity, a lot of people's intellectual capacity, actually goes into post-rationalizing the things we want to believe, the things that our society tells us are true, the things that we need to show we believe to maintain our group identities and to stay in with our friends and family and wider society. And again, it's fascinating because you can explore those biases and those risks to human thinking and those problems with critical thinking in so many different domains that cause problems today. But it does feel to me like animal agriculture is like the perfect crucible.
Yeah, it is.
Because it's one of those spaces where even the professionals and the public intellectuals and the thinkers whose entire life mission is focusing on talking about critical thinking and skepticism and rationality still have, most of them still have how we treat non-human animals is like a sort of kryptonite blind spot. It's absolutely fascinating.
Well, so it's
sorry, that was a massively long.
No. It's good. As I said, I to me, the way to have these conversations is you have to get the information out there, and then you can start to explore it and understand it. And I think far too often, in society, people just want to jump to, the sound bites and the little bits rather than hearing it in its form. So I appreciate that laying it out. And I think, Jamie, as I hear you talking, firstly, I'll say I think you've said a couple of times, like through reason, through understanding, we're trying to get to the root of it. We're trying to actually see what's there, what's the truth of it. And that, to me, that has to be the approach. And when we do that with this, I think there's layers to it, as you said. And the agriculture example of it is a really good one, where you can move through layers of is it okay? Is it not okay? And you can start thinking about nature, and you can start thinking about all different things. I think at the root of it, what I hear, and I'm curious your thoughts on it, is it's almost like you talked about religion before, right? And this idea of the stories that were told and gods and all that. And there's an argument to be made that the function of religion was in some ways connected to what you're trying to achieve with sentientism. If I could say that word, and I'll probably get it right once out of every 10 times I say it here. But
that was good.
In some ways, there is a human nature, if you will. There is a natural way in which we, the world, functions, right? Somebody could say, you asked the question, so let me hit that directly. Would we ever go back to farming animals? Would we ever go back to slaughtering animals and eating them for ourselves? What reason would we have? I could see somebody saying, well, if we look out in nature, we would see other animals doing it and say, well, maybe there's reason for us to do it. So there's this natural argument that says, but what I think you're getting at is a very evolutionary process, literally and figuratively, of we as humans, once we gained this gift, perhaps, of consciousness, we had the ability to look at nature, observe it, and say, there's things we like about it and there's things we don't. And religion, in some ways, you can make an argument, is you needed something that powerful the risk of eternal damnation, to get people to go against this natural instinct, which is so inbred in us, to say, no, 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 use your consciousness, use this gift evolution has given us to not just act in our natural way, to actually make decisions that we think are rooted in reason and compassion in a way that makes more sense. Now, I think what we've seen over time, it sounds like you and I would agree on this, is that religion maybe isn't the best tool for that. It brings about all these dogmatic beliefs. It still allows for human nature to come in, and greed and selfishness and self-centeredness and all these different things, which that's not it. But at the root of it, what it sounds like this is a new evolution of that, which is to say maybe there's a better way to get people to realize we don't just have to act in our natural form. We don't just have to give in to what that is and hunt and eat animals, or not care about living things, or be in this kind of scarcity mindset where I have to protect me and mine and my tribe. And I think there's a lot of power in that. I guess the question I ask, and this is back to, as I mentioned in the pre-show, that cynical perspective, just to question it is, what do you think that's possible? Do you think we can actually overcome that nature, overcome what is ingrained in us and embedded in us, to actually do something different, to live a different way, to say we don't have to do it the way we've always done it. We don't have to do it the way our ego, our subconscious, our mind pulls us towards. Do you actually think that's something we can achieve? Because as you said, I think in theory, the concept, so many people would say it's beautiful. It's the world we should live in, but unfortunately it's not the world we live in. So it's unrealistic to expect to get there. I assume obviously you have optimism, but what gives you the reason for that optimism that we can overcome that? Because arguably religion couldn't do it. God, the fear of an all-powerful being in the sky who will send us to eternal damnation, did not get us there. Why do we think this will get us there?